Now inside. And the sun sets slowly in the west. We'll move it. Welcome aboard for everyone. Simply the best. Been looking everywhere for Selena. Haven't been able to find her. Her new spot in the club. Still, simply the best, after 50 years. Yes. I hope it doesn't fall down. Well, you don't look, you never look natural.
In that championship up there the other night.
I'll get this on record. Oh, really? Now that's all official. That's all official.
There's your son.
The missing Mel.
Hey?
Left hand. How are you, mate?
There you go.
Good to see you.
I just had my birthday the other night.
Yeah, that's him. Always kissing the women. Always kissing the women.
I tell you that, is it? Yeah, I'm right. You don't know me. You don't know me.
What are you shaking?
Hey, wait a minute. You don't know me.
Get rid of that thing.
What do you got to say to the public, mate? What have
I
you
have
got to
very
say?
little to say to you, and what I could say to you, I don't
keep
think I
yourself-
better say it.
Keep yourself, mate.
Yeah, Melbourne, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoying yourself? Hello, Barbara. My word, you're looking younger than ever. Isn't he? He's one of the Magnificent Seven. Hello, Colin. It's left hand. Good to see you, mate. Yeah. Great night. I'm taking the it's Colin Hughes. Minister Hughes, tell me, give me your report. How come you got in? How did you get a Guernsey?
They invited my wife.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. Right. So you're in good company. We're spanning 2 years tonight. Oh, here, I've been to Marley. Come in. Come. Smile.
No, he hasn't got the red light on.
Oh, Benny, go away with this.
I don't have a red light on, do I? I only do this for effect. Just getting a, official
I'm disappointed you didn't have your Ballarat trip this year.
was so close.
It was all hot to trot, really was.
So was the boat.
The
But the trailer wasn't
wasn't
up to the... I'll just keep mingling.
Okay.
Oh, here's Bill Haynes chatting up the birds. Hello, Margaret.
How are you, Ken?
Why, he's
Good to
not
see you.
filming you. He was trying to film on a copy crash, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He was trying to get it done.
Oh, the beauty's here. Aileen, got him. Eileen Raphael. No, there was nothing else. There was Eileen, and Elaine. Remember them?
Eileen, Elaine, and
Yes, Happy. How are you, Hap? A left-hander. Tell me, Hap, are you enjoying yourself?
Oh, it was wonderful, mate.
On such an auspicious occasion.
Tremendous. It's lovely to meet old friends again,
Is
isn't
it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. By the way, you remember that $20 you owe me?
No, definitely not.
See, he's getting sterilized.
It's only Alzheimer's, mate. Don't worry about it. Only selective Alzheimer's.
Selective Alzheimer's. It's come up with it. Touch come up with it. Lynn's going to go. Are you girls enjoying yourselves this evening? Here we are, over in the non-drinkers corner.
Excuse me, Mr. Ben, did you see what I did for you?
The husbands don't necessarily make it, but the good-looking boys do.
When this was
Righto.
Righto.
No, don't point that thing at me, it might go off.
You're consorting with a criminal league, you know, old Don. You never know he's old Don.
Yeah?
Yeah, you want to watch him. Trying to make this as candid as I can. Well,
Oh, yeah, the old photo. Then you might know who the ladies are.
don't. I know.
Murphy, you're old.
Right, Murphy. No, get out. Yeah, Alfie, left hand.
Yeah, mate.
Well, squares at a national title. Start of the race in Tasmania. That completes it. John Henry, how are you, John?
Thanks, Eddie, man. See, that's up from there.
Good to see you. Hello, Don.
Oh, hello,
Good
Ken.
to see you.
Hey, you and the Boy Scout, just shaking with your left
Left
hand.
hand, you're on the right hand, busy. How are you, Peter Donaldson?
Can you bend all that?
Good, mate. Good. Yours is going all in the official record. I don't know this gentleman.
Well, you got enough light for that, Ken?
Yeah, that's on a minimum.
Oh, yeah.
Angle. There's Marty flirting with the girls. Alan, how are you, Alan? Good to see you, old chap.
Good to see you.
Welcome. Hello.
Ben, Jean. Ken, Jean.
You don't swear because you're on official film.
Oh, right, okay, right.
I'm here.
Hey, where are my trees? You've forgotten, haven't you? Childy, we don't have drunks in here anymore. That's your best side? Yeah. Good to see you. Put him on the best table. Howie smooging up to the women as usual. Hey Rex, good to see you, buddy.
Beauty.
Yeah, caught you in the act. Oh, I haven't got John. I've got John and Chris. Yeah. Where would we be without this pair? Wow, don't know. Oh.
Probably mine. I've struck it. Yeah. Good to see you.
Don't you think I'm... Don't you think
Now
I'm
that's
big
close
enough?
up. That'll be.
I don't like.
Good to see you, Steve. I've got you on your best side. Do it again, quick. Do it again. Come on. This charming table.
She's talking, she's always talking.
Charming table. They're all talking. And how are you, Julie?
I like your haircut. Thank you. That's probably
How's
on
the
the video
family?
now.
Yeah, when are you going to get your hair cut, Billy? Hello, little Bill. Just a minute while I jump up.
There be a red light on?
It's on. There's a couple of good talkers there. They can talk.
When are you going over?
My word, there's a lot of grey hair around there tonight. How are you, Uncle?
How's that?
Oh, yeah, I'll get a close-up on it.
What are your girls going to have?
Marvin. Go get Sandy. How are you, Sandy? Have you balanced the book, Sandy?
Oh, yes.
Sharpie I do. Water.
I don't know. It's one of the Wilsons, I never know.
Send a Sharpie up there.
The Commodore and his dear lady.
Put it away, Cam.
He's a sick man.
I'd like to hand you over to our Commodore, Mr. Peter Taylor.
Thank you, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like first to welcome you all this evening, to all life members, past Commodores, honourable guests, and Mr. Harry Leggett, President of the VYC. It's a personal pleasure for me this evening to be the lucky chap standing in this spot. It's just the way the years have fallen, I suppose, but I'm very honoured to be standing here before such a distinguished room of previous club members, etc., etc. Namely, Eden Alec down there, who's been a past president of the VYC, life member of this club. So Eden, thank you very much for coming along this evening. And Eden also was very instrumental in the organising committee for tonight, but later on we'll get into the thank yous to everybody who's made it happen. To Christine Dance, who headed up that committee, a big thank you, Christine. Where are you sitting, Christine? Thank you. Oh, you're under the bow. You're safe there.
Thanks, Peter.
But enough of that, and I would like now to hand over to introduce, in fact, he's going to get me about this. I'm not responsible, Clyde. I'm just reading the notes that were given to me by our fantastic secretary. But I would like to introduce to you the past solo Australian champion and past Commodore of Royal Brighton Yacht Club. Have you driven a Ford lately, Mr. Clyde Ahern?
Distinguished guests and all those, the rabble that we used to call club members down at Mordialloc some years ago. I did have a little bit of advance warning that I'd be asked to say a few words, and they said, well, we've got a thingy-bob here. What do you call these things? You know,
Rostrum.
Yeah, one of those.
An altar.
To put your notes on, and I thought, crikey, I mean, I don't think it'd carry all the memories that I've got from Mordialloc Sailing Club. So I thought I'd have a look and see who was here in the room tonight, and I must say I'm delighted. But I know most of them. Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic because I didn't expect so many of you still to be living, really. But I will say this, what can you say? And the best way I can do it, I think, is looking at that wonderful Sharpie up on the wall there that I spent so many wonderful years in, and looking up a few notes about that just to start the proceedings off. I will say at the outset, I started sailing here in 1948, and just a couple of years after the club was formed. I was quite young at the time. We used to take out babies in those days. And if my memory serves me right, the club consisted of about 6 12-square-metre sharpies. And I know that Graham Bryce's going to go into the history of the club later, but I can remember those 6. And I got an opportunity to sail on a boat called Southern Star, which was being built by the Murphy brothers, and it was skippered by Alf Murphy, and we had Peter Payne on the sheet, and I got the job of going up forward. And I still haven't learned how to do it. But we did have a lot of fun with Alf, and a lot of those days, of course, will be revived, and you can sort of, they're recorded in photographs, and I've got a few out there myself that we'll have a look at later in the year. But Selina, as I renamed that boat after my mother, because she supplied most of the 90 quid that it cost. No, I think Jimmy White sold it to me. He's a bit of a racketeer. He sold it to me for £130. And we had 5 or 6 years in that Sharpie. And it came originally from Frankston. It was built for Mr. Grice down there, that was very well known. Still is. He's got a wig. Pardon?
Not Goofy.
Not Goofy. No. Yeah, Goofy. And it was later bought by Jimmy White, who was a member here for many years. And the yacht itself, looking up some notes, I think when Jim White had it for 4 years, and it won the club championship 4 years in a row. And I'm happy to say that we had it for 4 years after that and did the same thing. So the boat actually won the club championship 8 years on the trot. So whoever built that boat must have known something, and it went very well. And it still looks all right. But all we had in those days, of course, were Sharpies. And that had to finish. We had to find some younger people to form crews. I can remember we used to even take girls out to fill up the... We used to, quite often we used to sail the boats 4 up, the 4th one being someone's girlfriend or other. And we used to frighten them to death because it was a favourite trick to go in what they used to call pier skite. And I might add, the father of all this tomfoolery and carrying on how to sail these boats is sitting over there, and his name's Ian Nichols. If I could just pause for a serious little note at this time. This club has had some wonderful members, and people that have done work over the years. I'm not going to bore you with all that because everybody has their turn. But somebody that really taught us about sailing, that kept the competitive edge up, that was always the first to recommend that we go to championships and be involved and try and beat all those guys around at Blackrock. The leader of all that, and a person, he probably doesn't even know it, but he took me out a few times in Ovaltine and taught me quite a lot, and that was Ian Nichols. Later on in the club's history, he introduced us to a funny little boat with a snub nose and red sails. We all thought he'd gone off his head. Once again, he proved to be dead right, and all the Sharpie sailors that were by then having children and bringing them up, Ian led the way with the mirror dinghy, and I spent 10 very, very happy and fruitful years with the mirror dinghies, once again led by Ian Nichols and the rest of his family. And they were very difficult to catch, I can tell you. So the way the club has gone in my life and my experience is that it seems to have fallen into sort of eras. The first era was the 12-square-metre Sharpies. The second era, for me, was the mirror dinghies. And later on we had a mixture of course, the lightweight Sharpies came and all sorts of other classes. But back in the earliest days, before we came onto the beach here and we had the clubhouse on the island, they were interesting days because we had no money. Nobody had any money. We had no cars. we had to sail everywhere. If we went down to Mornington or Frankston for a regatta, we had to sail there and sail back. And we did all that. Sail around to Black Rock, sail around to Sandringham. And in those days, we really learned something about seamanship. I won't mention the other thing. Drinking had something to do with it. But it was a regular thing on a Friday night, I think once a month or something like that, to have a social dance, or whatever. In those days, you used to dance by clutching onto each other. Something that stopped it falling over, I think. But I can remember Colin Muse thumping away on the piano. I can remember Peter Payne smashing away on the drums. I can't think who was playing the sax. Who was that, Colin? Who played the sax? That's right. Herb Killis. And we used to provide our own entertainment. And there was something dreadful used to happen down there too, because one particular night I was introduced to a young lady who seemed to be clinging on to me better than the rest. And it's very shocking to say that she's still clinging on to me. Just about, I would say, 46 years later. Never get a sucker even break. But they were great days, socially. I'm sure there's been a few other sort of people who've gotten together in those days. I can remember those original Sharpie sailors. They did something. Some of them are here tonight. Stan, Ron Keller, Stan Madison, Ron Keller, Colin Muse, Ian, of course. Some of us. Derbies. Al. I haven't seen Al yet. Is he here? Good on you, mate. It was your fault I got into this. Look, there's lots of reminiscing to be done later, and I thank you for the opportunity to just say these few words, and to thank you very much for the opportunity to have enjoyed all of your company over the years, and I hope it continues for a long time yet. And I'm very particular. I'm not going to pick out people, but it's very gratifying for me, particularly to see the Leverett family represented here tonight with Barbara. Well, of course, as a Commodore, and he was also responsible for kicking a few behinds in his day, but he did run a very tight ship, and he followed on from George Anstey and others, and it was great. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't want to let the soup get cold, and I hope to talk to you all later on this evening. Thank you, Commodore.
I would like to all be upstanding and charge your glasses.
Mordialloc Carnival and the lawn area to the south of the island. Meetings were held under a flat at Dave Bowman's, at Dave Allnutt. He converted this flat out of an old showroom, and this is where the first ideas of a yacht club or a sailing club of the buildings took place. And there was great resistance given by the Mordialloc Yacht Club to this, but the sailors, as sailors always are, were much more daring, much more enthusiastic, and more radical. And there was silent paddling across the creek in the depth of the night and crawling along underneath the floorboards of the Mordialloc Club, and they listened in to most of the strategy meetings. So the counterpunch was always ready, and the Mordialloc Club, I think, never realised just how well briefed these boys were. Chelsea Yacht Club was also in its formative years, and it had located some army huts up in the Bacchus Marsh area. So, raising £150 in promissory notes from Dave Bowman, the members, in the only two motorised vehicles which they had, which was Lindsay Ball's truck and Jim Leverett's panel van, made tracks up to Bacchus Marsh. And with George Anstey's expertise from the building sites and his prime mate, Macca MacDonald, and the rest of the team, the building was demolished, piece by piece, every piece numbered, and every position noted, and with a number of trips with Lindsay Ball's truck, it was brought back to Mordialloc, buried across the creek in Stewart's boats, and dumped like a tip site next to the original first clubhouse. And this was all done in one weekend. The site was prepared by the Yummy knee deep in the black sludge of the Mordialloc Creek, and finally the building was ready to go up. And cleverly George put this army hut on the top of 8-foot Yarra posts, and they dug out underneath and made the space for the boat storage. Now you've got to remember, just immediately post-war, when materials were so scarce and hard to come by, many people were surprised where all these big Jarrah posts and the timbers and slabs all arrived, and this was always shrouded by mystery, and I think the source still remains unknown today. The permit specified second-hand materials, and so there were many working bees that went on through the night, and I'm told that the new galvanised nails were only knocked halfway in, then bent over, and then they were painted with acid, so they looked rusty, and all the materials would be looking decidedly second-hand by the time the inspectors came to look. Anyway, the clubhouse was built, and it was a beautiful looking building with the double doors underneath, and the boys were all very, very proud of their new sailing club. And that was until Bill Templeton was accosted on Mordialloc Station early one morning. Bill was off to Pharmacy College, and a very official and officious gentleman from the building directorate came up to him and said, the club's in serious trouble. And Bill wasn't sure what he was talking about, so he explained that they had a permit for a simple low-level building, and in fact they built a two-storey edifice. And this was not on, and he was going to do something about it. Well, Bill got into town, and he wasn't sure what to do, and he rang George Anstey, and he said, boy, there's real strife here, and I don't know what we're going to do, but he's going to make us pull it down, but at least we're going to cop a decent fine. Well, connections are immeasurable. George Anstey got on to made a contact with Sir Arthur Warner, MP, Minister for the Crown, very, very keen yachty, and somewhere in the next time,
foreground?
Very, very short, that pile disappeared. And now the club was growing its membership, it had its clubhouse, and all of this, after all of this, it was only 19 months old. So the development in the early days was really quite dramatic with a small number of people. The official opening ceremony was set for Sunday the 7th of December, 1947, and there were more VIPs there than there were members. Access to the sailing club was, of course, by the old punt. And I guess there are probably enough stories about the punt that would fill the night alone without talking about all the rest. But the punt had at least 3 sites and around the island. But I think some of the best stories are when it was coming across from the carnival, and this is when Clive was talking. They had the regular dancers with Colin on piano and Peter and Chips playing drums and Bert Kellis on sax. And one night it was a very special evening, and they invited the VIPs. Now the punt, you pulled it across by a chain, and the only way you could steer it was by standing on one side or the other, and it would veer left or it would veer right. The problem was it nearly always had sloppy water running around the bottom, and it had too many people in it. And yes, we did manage to tip the mayor and his wife and all the rest into the Muddy Creek one night. So it has been done. Another occasion on the punt was when Strike was running very strong at the Mordialloc Club. He disappeared one day, and it was a strong northerly blow. And the next news that was received was a phone call from Blair Gowrie. They found our punt, and I'm told that it's a very long, slow trip towing a punt back from Blair Gowrie and old clinker crash boat. But it was done. But in spite of all this, I think the sailing was the real passion, and you were a hard-nosed sailor, or you weren't there, as I'm told that Kenny Taylor found out when he was expelled from the yacht club for fishing from his Sharpie. Racing was important, and in the early days the Sharpies would take off, tack up out the creek with the boys on board, sail out, throw the boys over at a suitable place, sail back to the starting line, have their race, then go and sail, pick the white marks up again and bring them home. So there was a true dedication to this, but it did become a bit tiresome, and a deal was struck with the Mordialloc Carnival. I think Nicky was assistant to the treasurer in those days, and they arranged a financial grant, and the members of the Mordialloc Sailing Club ran the Wizzy World completely for 2 years, and at the end of that period the Carnival grant bought our first crash boat, which was fitted with a single piston Chapman engine. The boat was actually built by a guy called Gormill up at Cannonock Creek, and I believe he built beautiful boats, no plans whatsoever. He'd lay up one side of the boat and then look at it and give a mirror image down the other, and you ended up with the perfect clinker boat. I'm not too sure if there's any. Also, fair to say that Nico's taught many of us he's not only a competitive racer, but he's the true seaman. And I think seamanship is also a very, very important part of sailing, and it's not always guys that can win and skipper the boat fastest. It's also very important for clubs like this to produce people who understand boats and who are seamen, and Nico certainly was. And I've also been told, I'll attribute this to Musey, but I think back in the early days on Ovaltine, when I was told that when most skippers say ready about Leo, on Ovaltine it was very often dive, dive, dive. And I think that's a very short rundown. It's something we can't, that we should write a book on. It's certainly, I apologise that I haven't been able to do it justice, but I'm sure people will get restless, and I think I've had long enough. And I'll now pass over to Ian to propose the help.
When I was Commodore, we didn't do much of that. We used to pour it down. Well, sitting here this evening on my program, I've been writing notes. You left them up there, so it's probably just as well. I feel very humble to have been spoken about by this tonight. This club, perhaps not the last 5 or 6 years, but up until then has been my whole life, my family's life, my wife's life and my 5 kids. I've got 5 kids that really have never given me a moment's trouble. I mean, we have to get Billy out of some girl's bed and things like that. Well, I hope it was a girl anyway, but they were brought up in their baskets. The younger ones, when Bet and Val heard, where are you, Val? Stand up. She's a nice silver-haired girl down there who's married to Johnny Hurt, who is one of the original members of this club. He was a kid at the Mordialloc Club when they had the breakaway. And when you talk about hard work, those kids had to do hard work. I'll get back to that in a minute. So I'll go about it now. When we got the yacht club, after the conniving and growing up the creek with mother laws, which appealed to a lot of people, especially me, and listening to the Mordialloc Club and forestalling them with every member of Parliament there was, then when we built it, you had to buy so many footy doubles a week. I was lucky because Beck used to work with PNG as a draftswoman, and she could flog them around there, you know. Government servants, they had plenty of money then, like they got now. As soon as we get rid of a few of them, bloody good thing. Without the sorry, all the rest of you over people like Peg Anstey. I just found out that Anstey, her father, was a member of the Labor Party for 40 years. And he disguised it so well because he used every member of Parliament there was, no matter what their side. But we had to sell these footy doubles. We had to work 4 hours a week down the yacht club or pay a shilling an hour. When you were a kid in high school, a shilling an hour was an awful lot of money. And to me even, on a rehab thing of £3.5 a week and trying to take that out, that was hard enough. Because I was brought up in the days when you believed that if you took a woman out, you paid for a dinner and you paid for a theatre and you did the rest. I mean, nowadays it's different.
What was the rest?
And the great thing about it was they were all then virgins.
That's your story, you just thinking, Jim.
But not only that, as Louis said, we ran the Wizzy Whirl over Carnival. And one night a week you were rostered and you had to go over there and help on that and goodness knows what not. And I came down here, I was trying to start a nursery, and I came down here this weekend to paint our snipe. I had this lovely tin of blue paint which was very hard to get and it probably cost me $5 shillings. When I got there, it had disappeared, so had the brush. When I looked over at the carnival, the Wizzy Whirl was blue. Bloody George Anstey, pinch my tin of paint. We had a stand-up fight. And the only fellow that was ever braver than me in the yacht club was this bloke up here, Johnny Hurt, who after the debate about not selling his football doubles called him a fascist bastard. Making sure at the time that he had one foot on the pump and ready to go. He took off like the cow he was. That, unfortunately, was perhaps getting towards the end of George. Because George, and I think this is what this pub is all about, and this is what this night is all about, and we're very lucky to have his gorgeous daughter Peg, who I thought in her day was quite a plain girl.
You're not in politics, mate.
With age, she has improved the things. So don't have a talk. But George was a scoundrel. He was not the lovable scoundrel. He was the best organiser that I have ever met. We could do with him in my business too, I'll tell you, he was over there. He used everybody. As I said, I was surprised. I thought he was a Liberal there, although I can remember we put George White in Parliament. The other fellow that we've got to thank for this club is Billy Templeton, who was a kid who just left school doing pharmacy, had a brain as big as a spinnaker pole, I suppose. Well, a spinnaker. He worked his guts out. He ended up in Parliament as a government whip. He's unfortunately, through illness, not allowed to be here tonight, and he should be the one place who is still living who should be here, because we've got an awful lot to thank Bill for. And George was a fellow you would meet once in a lifetime. It's reputed he ran a push in the Depression. You young people wouldn't know what a push was. probably think it was something that two fellows that lived together did. But these... The push was a gang, and you went around and there was a Jimmy Brooks gang and there were half a dozen of them in the city, and they used to spend their weekends fighting. Tear up the railway pickets and do the rest of it. Now, it's only reputed, I can't guarantee this, but George ran one. And he ran us like that too. We had to do all the dirty, sneaking things that politicians do. We planted trees up the creek, which all died. We helped on the carnival committee. We helped in elections. We put up Bill Templeton, and I don't think he was 21, against John Kane's father in Norfolk. And with Jimmy Levitt's truck with 2 loudspeakers, we went up there and we distributed posters, we did everything. But the whole thing is we had a lot of fun. We didn't sit on our bloody backsides like kids do today. We got £500, I think, from Daddy Bowman. I may be wrong. We probably did have a crisis when we paid it back. We worked at the Carnival Committee who paid for the motors for our boat, they paid for our slip. And interesting enough, this George Anstey, when we were building this slip, and people used to come up the creek at above the 5 mile an hour and they would drag the water along, and we had this levee bank so we could work and flood it. And George was ready for them. He had a bit of 4x4. And if they looked like they were going too fast, he used to float it out in front of them. And Dave Allnut didn't mind because he used to repair them. But it was an eye-opener here. If anybody who's going to the politics, they should come down this path and talk to some of us older members. We can tell them what they can do. This candidate's got nothing on, George, I can tell you. Or the other fellow we just got rid of that business. Except George was never rude. What are you looking at, mate? Up there? But anyway, enough of that. I think there are 2 fellows that we're particularly going to thank this club for. One is George and one is Billy Templeton who come here tonight. And I would like you all to be upstanding, raise your glasses, and drink a toast. What is this? What couple of what? Thank you. Well, will you read the note?
Used to make my high good news.
The op shop, all right. I would like you all to know Peg, whose real name is what really Peg, but it's unconventional.
Nina.
To tell you about something that her mum has given this club because their dad loved it. Go on.
Oh, well, my mum is now 90 and she thought that it might be an appropriate time to send this cheque with this little note. Seeing you are having your 50th celebration, I thought it might be an appropriate time to remember the foundation members. Look, you can probably see better than me.
Right.
These glasses are not working too well. Not quite strong enough. No, thanks.
To remember the foundation members, my late husband was one of them. He was too. He was the first one. We and the boys worked very hard to get the club established along with many others. And I'm donating $500 for perpetual trophy. Is that I.E. Nancy?
Jan, George Ninian.
George?
George Ninian.
Ninian? I wish I'd known that. I'd have killed him. George Ninian.
Both grandfathers. George Anstey was one grandfather and Ninian Bow was his maternal.
Good gracious me. Or whatever you think appropriate. I'd like it to go to one of the up-and-coming young boys. Thank you, that's what I would have done too. All the best to the club. I found some old photos. My daughter will bring them on Saturday night. It's actually Friday. But I must explain about Peg's mum. Peg's mum was a lovely lady, but George had her in the right place for Victorian wife. She listened, she did what she was told to do, and she was not silly.